This happened to me when I was about 12 or 13 years old, so about 15 years ago, and I am female. The town that I was living in had developed a lot since this story. But when this happened, there were a lot of factories spread out with lots of land in between them. There was a Walmart being built in this area, but it had barely started construction. There was a main highway that ran through there, but my mom didn't like taking it, as much as traffic would get bad most of the time. The side streets we would take were desolate and not much light. There was also little to no cars taking these streets. I can't remember where we were coming from that night, but in the car, there was my mom, my brother, who was 3 years younger than me, and me. My mom is obviously driving. I'm in the passenger seat, and my brother is sitting behind me. My mom is the sweetest person ever, but is very adamant that she will never stop to help someone on the side of the road, or pick somebody up, especially when her kids were in the car. She does, however, make sure she calls the police so that they can get help. It was around 9 p.m., and we were going home, when my mom and I spot someone on the side of the road by the passenger side with their hood up. Nothing out of the ordinary, as my mom slows down a little, since it is dark outside, and doesn't want to harm anyone who might be fixing their car. As soon as we are close to the car, the guy steps out from around the hood, and towards the street, he is waving us down. I don't remember much of a description, because I wasn't paying too much attention. Plus, I could barely see the man. But I do remember feeling bad we weren't at least going to stop and see what he needed. The man at this point is in the middle of the road, waving his hands. But as we come up on the car, we don't see anyone else in the car. So my mom swerves around him, tells my brother to find her phone in her purse that was on the floor between the front and back seats. I look at my mom as she looks in her rearview mirror, and her face goes white, and her eyes get wide. My mom slams her foot on the accelerator. This is highly unusual for my mom, as she is really good at going the speed limit. At this point, I know something is wrong. My mom's voice goes high, and in a panicked voice, she is asking my brother, where is her phone? I'm yelling at her, what is going on? All this chaos is freaking my brother out, and with him being so little, he is crying. He can't find the phone. My mom keeps her eyes on the road, but keeps glancing up continuously at her rearview mirror, and finally answers, he's following us. I'm not exactly sure what she is talking about, but I know that this isn't a good situation. My mom is speeding towards the highway, and thank goodness there is no traffic. I look in the back window and see someone passing cars to try to keep up with my mom. I ask her where she's going, and she told me she's heading to the police station. As we are getting close, my mom tells me to jump out of the car as soon as she stops, and grab my brother from the back seat while she runs around to the car to meet us. My mom stops right in front of the police station, and doesn't even wait for the car to fully come to a stop before she puts it in park. I open my door as fast as I can and grab my brother, who's quickly opened his door. I take off in a full sprint with my brother in one hand, my mom in the other. We finally talk to a police officer when I finally understand the full extent of what had happened. My mom told the police officer that once we had passed the guy with a broken down car, he quickly ran to the hood of his car and slammed it. He then got into his car and sped after us. That was when my mom knew this guy had horrible intentions. She said he kept trying to speed up to get on the side of us, but she was able to speed up to avoid that. Once my mom had turned to the police station, she said the guy had stopped following her, but still wanted to get to the police station in case he changed his mind. She gave the best description of the guy in his car, but because everything that happened so fast, she didn't get license plate number. I'm pretty sure the police never found him. I'm also not sure what the guy had planned for us if we had actually stopped to help, but I know it was nothing good. To the guy that faked his car being broken down on the empty street, let's never meet again.
This story is by Adrian Dunmore. Hello everyone out there. Today I wanted to share one of my experiences with the famous Ouija board with you. When you are interested in the occult and paranormal, then you will stumble someday over that thing. So there is also a story with that. Over the years I've tried it a few times, mostly nothing happened, but there were moments it actually worked, and there was one that was really special. I thought this experience might be interesting for some of you. But before I begin with the story, I wanted to mention that a Ouija board isn't a toy. Many people, also the people in this story, try it for fun. They think that it's a game, but regardless of whether you believe in such stuff or not, never do a Ouija session unprepared. And again, if some of you don't believe me, that's absolutely fine. I am not angry at you for that. It happened 6 years ago when I was 17. It was Halloween and my girlfriend and me attended a Halloween party. We had a lot of fun there. As it became very late, a few people had the idea to try out a Ouija session because someone brought a board to the party. I did a Ouija session with my aunt before, in which we tried to talk to a certain person, but sadly nothing happened. And I was a bit drunk, so I thought it would be fun. My aunt would have been absolutely angry with me, because you always should do a Ouija session with a clear mind. It could be a bad idea when you're drunk or high, but being drunk wasn't our only mistake. Again, when you're doing a Ouija session, then always be prepared. Inform yourself, do it with the practiced person, buy frankincense and candles, prepare questions and do it with respect. You don't know what you could bring in this world, and it could be dangerous. But let's go back to the main story. In the end, we were 6 people that wanted to try it. My girlfriend and me, 3 other ladies, and a guy that I will call Norman for this story. The Ouija board belonged to Norman, but he did not try it before. We went in a quiet room so the other guests couldn't disrupt us. So we were sitting in this room, which was only lighted by 2 phones, and we thought that it would be the fun of our lives. I don't know anymore how long we were sitting in this room and yelled questions against the board. 2 of the 3 girls became bored and decided to go back to the party. That is also a big mistake. Never break the circle when you are doing Ouija. Well, and then there was just Norman, the other girl, my girlfriend and me, who tried to summon a ghost. We asked questions again and again, and then something happened. When Norman asked for the 100th time if someone is there, the planchette began to move slowly. We did it. Finally, we had contact with something. Norman then asked who the presence is that was with us in the room. We got a name, Luca. Norman was very happy that something was happening, and he went on talking to Luca. A few moments later, we found out that Luca was a little 8-year-old boy. At this point, I got a bad feeling. My grandpa was a demonologist and did researches with paranormal and occult things like ghosts, demons, and other things to find out more about it. In his notes, he mentioned that evil entities like demons often like to disguise themselves as little children because they seem harmless, and so is Luca, harmless and friendly like a little child. Norman had a lot of fun talking to the boy, but soon the other girl and my girlfriend also noticed that something was odd. The whole atmosphere of the room was just bad. Then one of the phones broke. It belonged to my girlfriend and was a new one, just a few weeks old. I said to Norman that it would be best if we stopped this, but he didn't listen. After a while, we didn't get right answers anymore. The planchette just moved to random numbers or letters that didn't make any sense. Also, a weird sweet smell came up in the room. It didn't smell good, it was disgustingly sweet. I remember what my aunt told me about Ouija sessions and the answers you can get. When the answers to your questions don't make any sense, then you should stop immediately because the thing you called is mocking you at this point. It could be stupid to go on. Finally, Norman also decided that we should end this because he was annoyed. But you can't just go and leave the board there. You have to ask the entity you're talking with if you can stop the session. But every time we asked, the planchette was moving to no, and something like that can be a huge problem. The thing was mocking us, and we became a bit afraid. Norman and the other girl wanted to go, but they could be persuaded to stay a bit longer. Lucas's game took longer than we would like. Every time he responded just with no or senseless letter number combinations, but finally he responded with yes, and we could say goodbye. It was truly bizarre how the atmosphere changed after that. It wasn't threatening anymore, and also the disgusting sweet smell was gone. The girl left without a word to us, and Norman was very scared after that whole experience. Days after that, I saw Norman again. He didn't look very good, like he was sick. We talked a bit, and he told me that he got rid of the Ouija board. He said that he had terrible nightmares after that, and that he always had the feeling that something was watching him. He's better without the board. This was the only Ouija session I had where something like that happened. The other ones were very harmless, interesting, but not that spectacular. And hopefully Luca the little boy is back where he belongs. And that's it. This was the story about the most interesting Ouija experience I ever had. I hope you found it also interesting and enjoyed it a bit.
Back when I was attending university, I used to work on campus at one of the dining halls during the dinner night shift. I lived in the next town over since it was cheaper to live in a crappy little apartment out of town than to live on campus in a dorm. But I didn't own a car, so I had to take the bus. One night, I had just gotten off a shift at work. My feet were killing me, and I was completely exhausted as I slowly made my way to the bus stop. I noticed a man, much older than me, sitting on one of the two benches at the otherwise empty bus stop, but I didn't pay too much attention to him. I simply sat down on the second bench and listened to some music while waiting for the bus to arrive. The first sign that things were starting to get weird was when I kept noticing out of the corner of my eye that he was staring at me. At first I thought I might be imagining it, so I looked over and caught him quickly turning his head to look away. Okay, so he was staring at me. This wasn't completely out of the ordinary, since being a young college girl seemed to gain me a bit of attention from older men. So like usual, I just ignored him. That was a mistake. Again, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him look at me. But instead of just staring at me, this time he got up and walked over to sit next to me instead. I continued listening to my music, hoping that he'd see the earbuds and take the hint that I wasn't interested in having a conversation. Instead, this man literally took the earbud out of my ear. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said as my head snapped back to look at him in shock. I should have told him off for touching my things and demanded he leave me alone, but I was sort of frozen, and I didn't want to make him mad. Hi, I replied quietly. He started introducing himself as Mike and telling me that he lived in the area, and it was always nice to see pretty girls like me at the university bus stop. He explained that he was a real man, unlike the boys I went to school with, and that I should go home with him that night. I was shy, scared virgin, who had never had a man be as bold as this to my face. I say to my face because I had certainly gotten my fair share of unsolicited private pictures online by that point, but I digress. I didn't know how to respond, so I didn't. But that didn't stop Mike from continuing to explain to me all of the fun things he wanted to do to me at his place that night. He got into graphic detail. The things he described started out with basic things you'd expect, and escalated to him asking if I'd like being choked until I turned purple and passed out in bed. I wish there were anyone else at that bus stop, but it was just the two of us, in the dark, alone, as I counted the seconds until the bus would arrive. Then Mike took things to a different level of shocking by telling me, "Listen, the demons want me to ask you for your phone number, and they say you should give it to me, or you won't like what happens." He actually had the audacity to start stroking my hair. His hand was gentle, but I didn't want him touching me at all. This was shocking for a number of reasons. The demons? I wouldn't like what would happen? Why was he touching me? What the hell was this guy talking about? As though he could read my mind, Mike went on to explain. My therapist knows the demons are real. I told her about them. She says I'm not crazy, and the demons are real. He laughed, then abruptly stopped. "Now give me your phone number, like they said," he demanded, and as his hand stroked my hair for the last time, he stopped and gripped the back of my neck. Still gentle, but even more terrifying. I was scared, and obviously didn't want him to have my phone number. But he was taking out his phone, and I knew that he was going to call the number I gave him to make sure I wasn't lying to him. And he still had his hand on the back of my neck. So I reluctantly gave him my real phone number. Stupid, I know. But I was right. He immediately called to check. All I could think about was just not making this guy angry, long enough to get away from him. Then I blocked his number. Thankfully, the bus came moments later. I sat down as close to the front of the bus as I possibly could, since the bus was basically empty. Mike decided to sit directly across from me. At this point, I had tried listening to music again, hoping that being on the bus and him having my phone number would signal to him the end of our conversation. However, he decided to reach over and unzip my sweatshirt, revealing my work shirt and the name tag, which I had unfortunately forgot to remove in my haste to leave work that night. I hadn't told him my name yet. Abigail, what a beautiful name. Our daughter will be named Celeste. I should not have been shocked at this point, but I was. I had stopped listening to music again and zipped my sweatshirt back up, which made him laugh. You won't need that soon, anyway, he said, winked at me, implying how he'd planned to undress me further that night. At one stop, Mike tried to convince me to get off the bus with him. I told him no, that I was tired and I just wanted to go home. So he said okay and stayed on the bus. I knew that had been his stop, so the fact that he was staying on the bus worried me. I was sure this meant that he was planning on coming home with me instead. Baby, Mike whispered to me. I tried to ignore him, but he repeated himself louder. Baby. He had the most unsettling smile on his face, and I asked, what? He then laughed and told me, the demons say you smell nice. I was terrified. I felt like I was going to throw up by the time my bus stop arrived. I lived in an apartment alone, and didn't want him to know where I lived. Despite my body being exhausted and sore from work, adrenaline kicked in, and I bolted off the bus and ran straight home. I made it inside and locked the door. I looked at the people and didn't see him, so I went to carefully peek out of my window and saw him standing near the bus stop, looking around. He took out his phone, and sure enough, I started getting a call from an unknown number, since I hadn't saved his number. I ignored it. When he hung up, I started getting several texts asking where I'd gone, how he didn't like hide and seek, and how the demons just wanted to have fun, but I was being a little bitch about it. I was so scared, because he knew which apartment building I lived in, where I worked, where I went to school, my phone number, and my name. The only good thing, which made me feel slightly relieved, was he didn't know which specific apartment number I lived in. That's when the yelling started outside. There were no specific words said, just wordless yells of what I can only assume were frustration and anger. I blocked his number, and I kept all the lights off in my apartment as I cried with my back to the front door. Maybe I should have called the police, but my brain was so frazzled that I didn't even think of that until the next day. And by then, all I knew about him was that he was a mentally unstable man, probably named Mike, who hadn't actually done any physical harm to me, so I didn't think it was worth it. In hindsight, I know that I made a lot of stupid mistakes during this experience. I ended up moving away entirely at the end of the term of school for an unrelated reason. But until then, I switched to day shifts at work and was paranoid every night. Thankfully, I never saw the man again, though. So Mike, the scary guy from the bus stop who tried to follow me home, I never went to meet you or your demons ever again.
I'm a 31-year-old woman. This happened a few years back. I was walking from a friend's house to meet my son's father, X, at a bar we frequented in those days. It was winter, icy, and snowing with giant piles of snow all around. I was walking from a friend's house around 9 p.m. down an alley that served as a driveway area for many houses. Not a great neighborhood, but not particularly bad either. I was wearing my apocalypse boots, waterproof, knee-high, winterproof. I usually have headphones in, blaring music while I walk, but that night, for some reason, I decided not to. In hindsight, that is what saved me. I'm about the equivalent of 2-3 blocks away from the bar. There's a younger guy, early 20s, walking about 50 feet behind me. "Hey, you." I turned around. It seems he's talking to someone else. "Hey." I look back, then continue walking. "Yeah, you, no, don't turn around, sweetheart." I start to walk faster as I realize he's getting closer. Ahead of me, I see an SUV running, backed out of a parking spot but blocking my path. I turn around, there's another guy. The door to the SUV opens and there's a couple of guys in it looking at me. One gets out and stands by the open door. I turn to look at the guy behind me. Out of fucking nowhere, about 5 more guys come out, surrounding me from a distance, slowly closing in. The realization that they were hiding behind piles of plowed snow hits me. I realized they were just standing and watching me. A couple of them had their phones out and were recording something that was about to go down. Nobody was smiling, but they were closing in on me, trying to get me to walk to the SUV. Fight or flight kicked in, and I decided I didn't want to know what was about to happen. I wanted to catch them off guard, so instead of running forward, I bolted to the left. Thank God for those boots. I could run across the ice no problem. I ended up cutting through a few yards and made it to the bar. "Guys trying to get me into your SUV while filming, let's not meet."